After almost 1 calendar year of ownership, I am unequivocally qualified to state this watch is a serious issue. Welcome back to Horological. So a quick bit of background in this watch. In 1973, Colonel William Pogue suited up for Skylab 4, America's final Skylab mission. On his wrist was the official Omega Speedmaster, the NASA-approved chronograph for every astronaut. But under his sleeve there was another watch, a watch he'd purchased himself for $71, a Seiko 61396005 Speedtimer. NASA had delayed issuing his official Omega Speedmaster. He had grown to implicitly trust that Seiko because before the mission, Pogue had used that Seiko during countless training sessions, timing rocket burns, engine tests and simulator runs. And when launch day came, he took it with him, quietly, without permission. For 84 days in orbit, that gold-dialed, Pepsi-bezeled Seiko orbited above the Earth, timing experiments, exercise sessions and sunsets that lasted a matter of minutes each. The secret of this watch was only discovered years later. That humble, self-winding Seiko was the first automatic chronograph ever to orbit the Earth from space. It's important to say this watch today, it isn't a Pogue, it's not a mechanical chronograph, it is a Seiko quartz solar caliber that's in this watch, but it pays direct homage to that watch that Colonel William Pogue had in his wrist all those years ago. So let's go through this Seiko Speedtimer with the Pogue colourway. So the case diameter is 41.5mm, the thickness is 13.3mm, lug width is 21mm, lug to lug 46mm. The movement is a Seiko V192 quartz solar caliber. It's got a domed sapphire crystal. The water resistance is quite respectable for a chronograph, 100 metres. The OEM bracelet tapers from that 21 at the end links down to 18mm at the clasp. And sized for the perfectly average 7-inch wrist, i.e. mine, it weighs 154 grams. When you first pick this watch up, it's got a quality weight and feel about it. It's got a fun vibe because of the colourway. And one of the things that attracted me to this watch was the earlier versions of these watches gained a nickname from the community. That nickname was Setona, the Seiko Daytona, and that put me off buying one. I didn't want to go about with one of these in my wrist with people thinking you're possibly a Daytona wannabe. If I was buying that kind of value a chronograph, it would definitely be a Zenith El Primero anyway. But when Seiko brought this watch out, there is no mistaking this watch for anything else. It is a product of entirely its own making, with that sunburst radial yellow, orange, gold dial and that Pepsi bezel. It is a design that is uniquely Seiko's. The minute I seen this watch, I knew I had to have it. The case is quite a simple affair. It's mostly high polished, a little bit of brushing on it and some very shallow chamfering work at the top of the sides. It's certainly not a Christopher Ward light catcher case, let's put it that way, but it is very tool watch forward. This watch has real wrist presence. It looks fantastic and it feels fantastic. When the bracelet is fitted just right, it sits amazing on wrist. For the money, it's a fantastic watch. At this price segment, the dial punches well above its weight. No one online can agree what colour this is, so I've just nicknamed the colour Pogue. This colour is called Pogue. I'm going to write to Pantone to get this put on their colour scale as Pogue. It has a standard tri-compacts chronograph layout to the face of the watch. The 3 o'clock sub-dial is the 24-hour one. In most chronographs this is a particularly useless complication, but I'll forgive it in this watch. This watch was a space-used chronograph, and at least it's paying homage to a space-used chronograph, and in that particular situation, having a 24-hour sub-dial could prove to be particularly useful. The 6 o'clock sub-dial is the minute counter for the chronograph. It's got a lovely red hand that pays homage to the original Pogue watch, and it's got a clever little Easter egg of a power meter built into it, so when you're not using it as a chronograph, it shows you how much energy reserve the watch has got. And incidentally, the watch will do, when that little red hand on that 6 o'clock sub-dial says full, the watch has got a full 6 months of power reserve in it. The 9 o'clock sub-dial is the running seconds for the watch, and it's a great way of hiding the fact it's quartz. It does tick away 1 tick at a second. It's not a smooth sweep, but it's a little bit innocuous here sitting at the 9 o'clock slot. It has the date in one of those typical Seiko positions between 4 and 5 o'clock, and the date's quite deeply recessed, and the reason for that is it's a sandwich dial construction where you have the coloured faceplate on top, and then below that, where the subdials sit, the subdials are actually solar receptors. So I quite like the fact that these subdials, you know, they've got multi-uses. We've got one that's a power reserve, a minute counter, and it's a solar receptor. Fantastic design by Seiko. But the effect of that is the date wheel is below that again, so it's like the third layer down. It's quite deep down there, and it does make it at obtuse angles a little bit difficult to read. It's just so deeply recessed. A lot of people have said the watch would benefit from not having the date wheel at all, and I kind of agree with that. It is a little bit deep. One of the outstanding features for the watch, for me anyway, is that Pepsi bezel tachymeter. You'll know how I feel about aluminium bezels, especially in the Pepsi colourway from watching earlier videos. I think it's a fantastic combination, and Seiko have done a fantastic job with this in this watch. The crystal quality in this watch is excellent. It has AR coating on the underneath, none on the outside. Take some notes on that, Omega, please. And it's got that gentle dome. It doesn't give mass distortion like a vintage domed crystal would, but it's there, and it just speaks quality. A chronograph with a nice dome crystal on it is a nice thing to behold. The movement is rated in Seiko's manual has been accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds a month. In reality, I've only noticed a deviation of a couple of seconds per month, so it's an extremely accurate calibre in this. And again, it's an example of Seiko under-promising and over-delivering on the accuracy stakes. The crown in this watch isn't signed a la Seiko, but it does have a nice little channel cut out on it, and when you do click it out and you hack the watch, you're adjusting the watch, it does have a quality feel about it. It's a nice crown in this watch, and it's a nice size to use. And here we're getting on to the major issue that I have with this watch. I mean, you've seen the thumbnail, so the major issue is the bracelet. The OEM clasp that comes with the bracelet, it's actually quite good. It's milled out underneath, and it is a pressed upper. The problem with that pressed upper is it's only got 2 positions of micro adjust, and when I was messing about with the calipers looking at what was going on here, the adjustment points in the clasp aren't enough to give you the full adjustability that removing an end link does. So what that means, if you remove an end link, the watch could be too tight. If you reinstall that end link back into the bracelet, the watch could be too loose with not enough micro adjust to take that up. But I've got a solution for that. Hang back to later on and we'll come on to that solution. The other major issue that I have with the bracelet is Seiko have just picked a random bracelet from their back catalogue and they've fitted it to this watch. It doesn't actually shape to the end lugs properly. The end links and the lugs of the watch, they do not match at all, and at this price point that's a little bit disappointing. There's plenty of AliExpress and homage brands out there that can get this right. This watch came out in the UK in August 2024 and Seiko still haven't got these basics right. I wish Seiko would start listening to the community. It's not a huge change to get these things right for a company the size of Seiko. They're not doing this because they have to. This is a business decision they're making to do this, and that's highly disappointing. But apart from the woes with the bracelet, I absolutely love this watch. It looks great on wrist, it has great functionality, and as a quirky daily wearing piece, it fits into my collection almost perfectly. So what did I do to fix the issues with this watch? Well, I got onto Uncle Straps, formerly known as Uncle Seiko, and they have produced a nice outer for this clasp, and it has 3 positions of micro adjust. It also weighs a little bit less. The OEM Seiko clasp outer is 9 grams. This Uncle Straps one is 6 grams, but it's also 4mm longer, and it has 3 positions of micro adjust. So I put this on the watch and it transformed it. I was able to get the perfect fit with this bracelet. So a big thank you to Uncle Straps, and the things that they do, they have saved other Seiko watches for me in the past. And Uncle Straps actually saved my Seiko Arnie wearing experience. The metal keeper that came with the Seiko Arnie, it was as if it was Shiratsu polished into a samurai blade. After wearing the watch all day, your wrist was literally cut. So Uncle Straps produced a little silicone keeper for that watch, and it transformed the daily wearability of that Arnie. So a big thank you to them, because that's two Seiko watches they have practically saved for me now. Here in the UK at the moment, we're now approaching winter, we're in late autumn. The cold weather's about to really hit hard. So the watches that I tend to wear on a daily basis, I take them off bracelet and I put them on strap. So I've ordered this bison strap for this Pogue watch. I'd seen a picture on an online forum of this watch on a vintage tan leather kind of calfskin strap, and I thought I've got to get one of those for myself. So this is the watch on the strap, and I'm going to wear it like this at least until spring next year, when I'll put the bracelet back on and see how we get on with that. So that'll take that pathetic end link fixing out of my mind for at least a few months, and I'll see how I get on. I will report back either through a post or a short update video on the channel just how I'm getting on with the watch on the leather strap. But for now, this is how I'm going to wear it, and I'm sure you'll agree this watch has the potential of being an absolute strap monster in the collection long term. At the price point that this watch sits at, both in the UK and in the USA, there's absolutely nothing competes with it in terms of backstory, quirky looks and actual functionality. It is an amazing proposition of value, this watch. I would thoroughly recommend adding one to your collection, with the caveat, we know the bracelet's a weak point. It's Seiko, this is a common thing with them. Yet another watch in the budget category that punches well above its weight. Would I buy it again? Absolutely, I would buy it again, in a heartbeat. And remember, collecting watches isn't logical, but it is horological. Few couples have changed the world like Marie and Pierre Curie, but what most people don't realise is how deeply their discoveries shaped horology. Marie's radium discovery made watches glow throughout the night, and Pierre's work on the piezoelectric effect would one day make them tick with quartz precision. Together their legacy lit up but almost destroyed the entire watch industry, not once but twice. Welcome back to Horological. At the dawn of the 20th century, time began to glow. Luminous watch dials painted with radium shone like captured starlight, proof that science could light up the night. Yet behind that brilliance lay a hidden danger, and in one of science's greatest ironies, another discovery from the same family, quieter, slower to be understood, would one day help humankind measure time so precisely it could reach the stars. In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie discovered radium, a substance that glowed without a visible power source. To a world just discovering X-rays and wireless signals, it seemed miraculous. Companies raced to commercialise it. Medicines, cosmetics, tonic water, even Nuka-Cola Quantum. The public fascination with radium was instant, and soon it found its way onto the dials of clocks and watches. By the 1910s, radium was the miracle ingredient of the watch industry. Mixed with zinc sulfide, it made numerals and hands visible throughout the whole night, perfect for soldiers, aviators and shift workers. Brands like Westcox, Ingersoll, Elgin, they embraced it as a mark of modernity. But for the workers, mostly young women, just left school and with keen eyesight, would later become known as the Radium Girls. That progress came at a terrible cost. Trained to shape their brushes with their lips for precision, they unknowingly ingested tiny amounts of radium with every single stroke. The results were devastating. Bones that crumbled, jaws disintegrated, teeth falling out, and cancers that no one yet understood. Their fight for justice would change industrial health and safety forever. By the late 1940s, the radium era was fading. Many clock and watch manufacturers began removing radium from production, replacing it with weaker isotopes like tritium and safer phosphorant paints. By the 1950s, radium had mostly disappeared from mainstream manufacture. What had once been the symbol of modern progress had become a cautionary tale. Decades before radium's rapid rise, Pierre Curie and his brother Jacques had discovered something far quieter, less dramatic: the piezoelectric effect. They found that crystals like quartz could generate electricity when put under pressure and vibrate predictably when an electric charge was passed through them. Unlike radium, it didn't glow, it didn't sell newspapers, it simply sat in physics journals, waiting for technology and imagination on how to implement this discovery to catch up. In the 1930s, engineers at Bell Labs noticed its potential. By using quartz vibrations to regulate circuits, they could create clocks of extraordinary precision, far beyond any mechanical escapement. In 1927, engineers Warren Marrison and J.W. Horton at Bell Labs, they became the first to build a complete quartz clock. Just a quick interlude, it's John here from Horological. Today, filming this, the channel has been officially launched one calendar month. I've had loads of views, I've had quite a few subscribers so far, but I'd like to see a few more of those views converting into subscriptions. It costs you absolutely nothing and it helps me build the channel and bring you more historical, horological documentaries just like this one. Thank you very much. What radium offered in brightness, piezoelectricity offered in accuracy. By the 1960s, General Time West clocks had moved fully into the electronic age. Its Mille division developed quartz-based timing modules and circuits for aerospace and scientific equipment. The same company that once painted radium on dials and clock hands was now building the timing systems that helped guide the Apollo spacecraft. And here lies the irony: radium and quartz will never meet in a mainstream consumer product. Let's call that the Blancpain effect. One discovery lit up the dials of the early 20th century, the other literally powered the timing of the space race. One burned bright and faded quickly, the other began quietly, and still defines precision timing to this day. Radium captured the world's imagination almost overnight, instantaneously. Piezoelectricity took half a century to mature, to find its purpose, but when it did, mankind used it to reach the moon and beyond. The two discoveries never shared a wrist, yet together they traced the arc of scientific ambition, from the visible wonder of a glow to the perfection of a temperature-compensated oscillating crystal. Marie Curie's discovery made time visible. Pierre, along with his brother Jacques, made it astonishingly accurate. It is almost unimaginable that a husband and wife working together at the turn of the century would uncover two discoveries that would each in their own way shake the very foundations of horology to its core. Marie Curie's discovery of radium initially lit the way, then it destroyed the very girls that were employed to apply it. Pierre Curie's discovery of piezoelectricity, along with his brother, decades later, would give birth to quartz oscillators, a tuned crystal with a heartbeat so precise it seemingly rendered mechanical movements obsolete overnight. Not really, but watch collecting has never been logical. Two discoveries born from the same partnership that eventually brought about the two greatest crises horology has ever faced, one of health and safety in the workplace and the other of progress, precision and obsolescence. And yet together they both remind us every revolution in any industry carries consequences. In the story of time, not every glow is friendly, and sometimes the slow burners eventually become the brightest discoveries of all. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. So, I got another Panerai.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Huh? Zappuccino, Zappuccino.
Welcome back to Horological. There are two sides to Panerai. The one that honours wartime divers and luminous dials of the past, and the one that keeps experimenting like an engineering laboratory. The Palm 1661 sits right between them, a watch born from Panerai's wildest experiment, the Lab ID, but designed for real-world wear. This is a story of how carbon fibre, once an exclusive motorsports material, became part of horology's DNA. In 2017, Panerai unveiled the Lab ID Palm 700, a concept watch that looked more like an Area 51 project than a simple mechanical wristwatch. Its case was made from Carbotech, a layered carbon composite, inside a movement engineered to run 50 years without lubrication. Plates, bridges and pivots were coated with carbon and DLC, an experiment in frictionless horology. At $100,000 and a production run of only 50 units, the Luminar 1950 Carbotech Palm 00700, the original Lab ID watch, released in 2017, complete unobtainium. The Lab ID wasn't meant for collectors, it was a proof of concept. It was Panerai's McLaren F1. This was Panerai's moonshot project. Panerai's Carbotech isn't merely a design statement, it is a physical expression of motorsport grade engineering translated into watchmaking. It borrows directly from the logic of carbon ceramic brakes and Formula One monocoques. Introduced in 2015, Carbotech is a laminated carbon composite made by stacking ultra-thin sheets of unidirectional carbon fibre, each bound with PEEK. I genuinely think the Panerai marketing executives have a night out every time I watch YouTuber says PEEK when discussing Panerai Carbotech cases. This one's on me. Polyether ether ketone, a polymer celebrated once fully cured for its thermal stability, chemical resistance and structural integrity. The layers are compressed under precise heat and pressure, forming an anisotropic matrix. Its strength and stiffness vary by fibre direction, just like the layup of aerospace and racing composites. This directional reinforcement it gives Carbotech an exceptional strength to weight ratio, resisting torsional stress and impact while remaining 14% lighter than grade 5 titanium. Unlike homogeneous metals, its laminated structure disperses stress across multiple planes, reducing fracture propagation. The marbled matte striations, they're not decoration, they're the physical fingerprint of the carbon itself. No two cases are the same. Every single Panerai Carbotech watch is essentially a piece unique. A quick point of note, never store a Carbotech watch head without its spring bars installed. Earlier Luminor models used large threaded steel bar systems, but these newer references, they rely only on standard spring bars and they seat directly into the lugs. Because of the directional nature of carbon fibre layups, the lugs represent the only realistic point of potential weakness in an otherwise near indestructible case. Carbon composites can handle immense forces when those loads are applied along their intended structural axes, but just like carbon bicycle frames, even a small compressive or clamping force applied across the weave's unsupported direction can cause localised damage. It's the same principle that ultimately doomed the OceanGate Titan submersible, a structure made from carbon composites strong enough to resist thousands of tons of pressure, yet gradually weakened by cyclic stress acting against the carbon layup's orientation. Carbotech is no different in principle, exceptionally strong, directionally stable, but never immune to the laws of physics. Powering most, Carbotech references is Panerai's in-house caliber P9010, designed and built in Neuchâtel. It's a twin-barrel automatic movement delivering 3 days of power reserve in a slim 6mm profile, almost a millimetre thinner than the P9000 that it replaced. So some of the movement highlights are it's a 4Hz movement, it has 31 joules, it's got twin barrels for consistent torque output, it's got a bidirectional rotor running in ceramic ball bearings, it has a fully free-sprung balance wheel with micro-adjustment screws, and it's got an independent quickset hour hand and stop seconds hacking for precise syncing. The movement's architecture, it favours durability over decoration. Broad bridges, oversized pivots, and a large bearing footprint give it the robustness expected of a diver's instrument. That same free-spinning rotor, however, it gives the P9010 its signature mechanical whisper, that subtle whoosh you hear as it winds itself. Panerai's service bulletin from 2016 until 2018 acknowledged an unusual side effect in Carbotech models with titanium casebacks. Due to the carbon composite case structure, vibration and mechanical resonance from the automatic winding system may be perceived differently. The titanium caseback, being of a more rigid metallic composition, may act as a soundboard, transmitting the noise of the oscillating mass more efficiently than steel or full composite configurations. Technically, that's exactly what happens. Carbotech's carbon matrix provides excellent lateral damping, absorbing vibration across its fibre planes. Titanium, by contrast, has a high acoustic transmission coefficient and a low damping profile. So the unidirectional rotor of the P9010, it sends micro vibrations through the movement cage into this titanium plate, which behaves like an acoustic resonator. Panerai clarified that this isn't a fault, but a natural artefact of mixed material acoustics, a composite absorber paired with a metallic reflector that in the second production run became a tuned feature to revel in and enjoy. It's a small detail that turns a mechanical function into an audible signature. So my first impressions of this watch were, when I picked it up, how light it was. This watch is just round about 100 grams, and my old Panerai was 180 grams. So you can't believe you're holding something that size that weighs so little. It's absolutely fantastic to behold. So that was the first thing that stood out for me about this watch. And then putting it on wrist, the other thing that stood out was the stiffness of the OEM strap. When I bought this watch, it had barely been worn, so the strap was like new. It was really stiff, really robust. The dial itself, it's not the most legible. Everything's blacked out, but you can always find a suitable angle to view the time at, and there's a lot of AR coating on the underneath of the crystal, and that certainly helps with that. It's a fantastic watch to behold. In some ways it looks like a Garmin smartwatch. It's very minimalistic. If you don't know Panerai, you won't know what this is on wrist. It doesn't attract the wrong kind of attention, but for the quiet if you know crowd, this watch is absolutely amazing. Once that strap starts to mould to your wrist after wearing it for a couple of days, the comfort of this watch is next level. It literally disappears on your wrist. It's just so light and so wearable. And if you've wore one of the older Panerai references, like I have worn a few of them over the years, It's just mind blowing how a watch that the older ones had so much physical presence. You could really feel them on wrist. They were quite unwieldy at times, moving about. If your wrist shrunk a little bit in the afternoon, that watch could swing about on your wrist. But this one always sits. The balance is perfect. It always sits nice on wrist. It's a fantastic watch. If you're going near a Panerai boutique, go in and try one of these on. You'll be absolutely amazed by it. The lume in this watch with the sandwich dial construction and the fully painted lume plate below that sandwich dial, it's got BGW9 on it and it must have several really thick coatings. The lume in this watch is amazing. I'll include the shot here and you can see for yourself. It is absolutely stunning at night. If you artificially charge it, it easily lasts throughout the night, and even without artificially charging it with a UV torch, it will last most of the night reasonably legible. As far as lume goes, it is stunning. The accuracy of this example I have here over the couple of weeks I've had it, it's been literally a couple of seconds fast per day. It's well within cost tolerances. The movement seems to be fantastic at holding good time, and I have been wearing it. I've been trying this out. I've done a couple of shorts on YouTube using this watch, and I've been going to it for my daily wear quite often. So it has been sitting, it has been worn, it's been getting moved about, and I've kept it constantly wound up during that time. So I've got a reasonably accurate picture of how this watch is going to perform long term, and from sitting here it looks really good. So I'll just go through a few quick specs of the watch just now. The case diameter is 44mm, which for me is just that Panerai sweet spot. The 47's too big and the 40s for a Panerai are a little too small for my taste anyway. I know it's subjective. The thickness is 14.5mm, so if you've had something on wrist like a Tudor Blancpain GMT, you know what that kind of thickness feels like. The lug width is 24, so a little bit wider, but that's a traditional Panerai thing. When the watches were heavier, they really needed that width of strap to control the weight of the head of the watch. In this one, they've just kept that up, I think, for tradition, and it looks good. It's a big wide band, and it becomes part of the watch's character. Panerai and straps have got a really long history, and changing straps is a Paneristi's hobby, changing straps on their Panerai. The lug to lug is 46mm, so it's more than manageable. There's Seiko divers out there. The one I'm wearing just now is a 47mm lug to lug, so this watch sits really nice on wrist. The movement, as discussed, it's a P9010 in-house Panerai movement. This one has hacking. We'll go on to a little bit about that later on. It's a 31 joules 4Hz movement, as was mentioned. Sapphire domed crystal, and the crystal quality is really, really good. I sometimes get out the diamond tester, not just to test if it is sapphire. You know, with Panerai it's going to be sapphire, but depending on how high that reading goes, you can tell the quality of the sapphire quite often as well. And I can say the sapphire on this is high quality. It's great quality sapphire they've used in this. The water resistance is a full fat 300 metres, so we're not getting that compromised Luminor Dewey 30 to 50 metres water resistance. This is a full fat 300 metres, and in my opinion, if you're going to buy a Panerai, that's what you should be looking for. It's got an OEM sailcloth style strap. It's a layered leather and kind of rubber strap that's on it. The quality is fantastic, and I must say this strap's had a revision somewhere along the production line. It's really hard to track down when that happened. This strap's a little more heavy duty than the earlier Luminors got. The original Carbotech Luminors had a strap that was a little bit lighter and a little bit thinner, but overall this one feels much higher quality. It has 72 hours power reserve from a twin barrel arrangement, so that ensures it's got a good torque output throughout the whole wind of the watch. And this exact example that I've got, it comes in at 108 grams, so it's a little bit heavier. It's a little bit heavier than some of those early review examples, but we'll go into that a little bit later in the video. The Panerai Luminor 1950 Marina Carbotech 1661, it brings all of that engineering to daily life at just over 100 grams, or well, it's 108 for mine on a Sporttech strap. It's roughly half the mass of a steel Luminor with bracelet, yet it feels solid and purposeful. It is heavier than those initial 93-gram review samples that were sent out to everybody when the watch was released, partially due to a slightly revised, more heavy-duty strap. I would say that maybe accounts for 4 or 5 of those grams, and it has a slightly revised case back, perhaps an attempt to dampen the aforementioned characterful rotor chatter a little. Panerai are the masters of undocumented specification changes mid-production run, but here the motivation seems well intentioned, a longer lasting strap design and an attempt to not exactly silence the character of the watch, but to tune the sound of it, a bit like a premium sports exhaust in a free revving, naturally aspirated engine. This watch is essentially the production version of the Lab ID Ultra Grail, not frictionless but finely tuned for the real world, slimmer, easily serviceable and infinitely more daily wearable. Panerai's loom has always been a strong part of the brand's identity. The PAM 1661 uses Superluminova BGW9 glowing an icy blue in the darkness. Those numerals are not printed, they're cutouts on a sandwich dial, a technique Panerai pioneered for the Italian Navy in the 1930s. I've never been a fan of Panerai's sausage dials, so it had to be a sandwich dial in this watch for me. Under ultraviolet, it looks like a science experiment captured in motion, because that's exactly what Panerai has always been, part tradition, part laboratory. Watchmaking borrows from motorsports more than we care to admit. Carbon composites, ceramic bearings, titanium alloys, low friction coatings, all born in racetracks before they reached our wrists. Tag Heuer, the headline sponsor of Formula One, Rolex, sponsors of enduring racing, and one-off special projects. Ear King anybody? Panerai's Lab ID was the limited edition track special, the GT3 RS if you will. The PAM 1661 is the available production model you can actually buy in daily drive every day, the 911 Turbo. Even the tactile stiffness of the Sportech strap, it feels like a new fire retardant FIA approved Sparco race suit, synthetic, technical and ready to perform. It even smells similar. In a market full of historical reissues, the PAM 1661 is refreshingly honest. It doesn't imitate the past, it takes the best of it and then wraps it up in the highest performance materials currently available, while maintaining serviceability and high comfort levels on wrist. You can hear the faint hum of the P9010 rotor, you can feel the polished matte carbon under your fingernails, and watch the loom glow like a gadget from Bethesda's Fallout universe. It's old world steampunk craftsmanship fused with new world material science and technology. The Lab ID floated the idea that mechanical watches could be maintenance free for 50 years. The PAM 1661 answers with a quieter truth. Make innovation accessible and people will buy into it. Panerai is a niche brand that gets a really hard time. I'm going to get a horse's head in my bed here. Oh, the compromised water resistance of aluminum Dewey, unfinished debauched movement of a PAM 318 Brooklyn Bridge boutique special, claiming various in-group and even ETA movements were in-house. The hacking seconds and extra finish were removed from the 90-10 movements in this watch during the early 2020s for some of the references. That hard time, in these cases, no pun intended, was well deserved, but in the varied landscape of Panerai, there is still the odd standout gem to be found. In road bikes, Pinarello is like Ferrari, refined and just the right side of brash. Bianchi is like Lamborghini, it's full on bull in a china shop. In watches I see Bulgari as Ferrari and Panerai as Lamborghini. In both instances I chose the Lamborghini option. But remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. Richard, Mille and Tissot, they couldn't be further apart, or could they? Welcome back to Horological. Back in 2023 I was working at the UCI Cycling World Championships in Glasgow. As a lifelong cycling fan, it was surreal being right there on the roadside as part of the action, the biggest cycling event Scotland has ever hosted. It was wet, loud and electric, and even though I was working, I couldn't help but get swept up in the atmosphere. Tissot was the official timekeeper of the championships, their clocks timing every finish and their logos everywhere you looked. The official prize watch was the Tissot T-Race Cycling UCI 2023 Special Edition, a 45mm black PVD coated quartz chronograph with a white strap decorated with the UCI rainbow bands. It was the watch that every new world champion would be handed on the podium. I had at the time reflected on who would soon be the owner of this watch. Here's a picture of me in the television getting soaking wet in the Glasgow rain as a member of the Dutch national team goes by, providing shelter for Mathieu van der Poel in the early laps of the city circuit. During one of my breaks, cold, soaked and looking for shelter, I ducked into the Tissot hospitality tent. The staff were brilliant, friendly, welcoming. They even handed me a cup of coffee as I warmed up from the cold. They let me take a closer look at a few of the watches that were there, including that exact UCI Special Edition winner's watch. It was a quiet 5-minute moment out of the rain that really stuck with me, and as it turned out, it connected me to what would become one of the most dramatic finishes of the entire World Championships. Later that day, I was standing just down for the corner of Bell Street when Mathieu van der Poel came flying through the city circuit. On the wet cobbles, he suddenly slipped and went down hard. The crowd gasped, but he was straight back onto his bike within seconds. He ripped the broken boa dial clean off his shoe and started hammering again, laying down what must have been a 500 angry watts through those final laps of that circuit. He didn't just recover, he absolutely smashed it, powering to one of the most memorable World Championship victories in years, winning by an incredible 1 minute 37 seconds over second placed Wout van Aert. And I couldn't help but think earlier that same day, I'd actually held his prize watch in my hand. The order of finish that day was Mathieu van der Poel in first place, a Richard Mille wearer, Wout van Aert in second place, a Rolex Daytona wearer, and Tadej Pogačar in third place, a Richard Mille wearer again. Quite literally top tier watches at the finish line that day. The whole experience that day made me appreciate Tissot even more. A few weeks later, I bought a pair of PRX quartz watches, one 40mm for me and one 35mm for my partner, both in that stunning mint green reed Tiffany blue, but we can't call it that, dial. This top was the colour chosen for the UCI World Championships colourway that year, and that watch dial, it echoes that colourway perfectly. They're crisp, modern, and honestly punch above their price point, but more than that, they remind me of that week in Glasgow, of rain, of bikes, of coffee, and a brand that had made time for a cold, dishevelled me on arguably the biggest event of the whole championships. I intentionally stayed away from the Powermatic 80 versions of the PRX, mainly because that particular movement inside the modern PRX isn't your traditional ETA 2824 variant. It's been modified with an 80-hour power reserve and a high-tech synthetic reed plastic with proprietary name escapement, made from lightweight anti-magnetic materials instead of metal. That progress comes at a cost. This newer version is laser regulated at factory, similar to the System 51 movements in the Blancpain Swatch collaboration watches, and it lacks a traditional regulator arm. It means that fine-tuning the accuracy, it isn't as simple as a watchmaker turning a screw. It's a sealed for stability, possibly profitability approach, locked by design and basically disposable, not something you would expect from a mechanical watch movement. It is worth noting that the COSC-certified PRX carbon variant has a traditional regulator system, but it is expensive in comparison. Of course, among marquee road professionals themselves, another watch brand name dominates: Richard Mille, Mathieu van der Poel, Tadej Pogačar, Mark Cavendish. All of them, they are supplied them, wear Richard Mille watches. They are a headline sponsor of Team UAE. and they have had massive success in recent years in the pro peloton. These are ultralight, shock-resistant pieces of mechanical art, carbon, titanium and precision engineering worth more than an entire fleet of carbon pro bicycles. It's performance and passion fused together. Tissot represents timing and heritage. This is the watch company that keeps the race moving and the timing accurate, and it's no easy task with the amount of bikes in the pro peloton all requiring an individual transponder and extremely high polling rates for timing accuracy and split decision resolution at the finish line. Some cycle races are so close that even the experts sometimes struggle to decide who crossed the line first. Tissot upholds those high standards that the sport demands, and in conjunction with high frame rate cameras and highly accurate timing zones and gates, integrity is maintained by the timing partner at all times. Richard Mille represents innovation and prestige, the watch brand that celebrates victory. But what really sets Richard Mille apart isn't just the 6 and 7 figure price tags or the skeletonized movements that they often use, it's the philosophy behind every partnership. This is a brand that doesn't chase celebrity, it chases performance. From Formula 1 to tennis courts, from the Tour de France to the Olympic track, Richard Mille's name appears in the wrists of people who quite literally live on the edge. Rafa Nadal's RM2704 was built to survive a 10G impact. Charles Leclerc's RM6702, it weighs in at just 32 grams. That's including the strap. Even sprinter Johan Blake wore his neon green RM5901 in competition, a watch light enough not to slow him down by even a tenth of a second. That's the essence of Richard Mille's philosophy right there. Watches as micro-engineering projects, not jewellery. They test materials borrowed from aerospace and Formula 1, titanium, carbon TPT, graphene composites and nanotubes. Then they apply them to a world where every single gram and every vibration counts. It's extreme horology where cost is secondary to innovation and the wearer becomes part of the system and part of the experiment. Every single sponsorship, every collaboration is chosen to mirror that idea of controlled risk. These are not safe ambassadors, they're athletes who push limits, they break bones and they rewrite world records. In that sense, Richard Mille doesn't just sponsor sport, it actually embodies it. The brand sells the idea that time itself can be conquered, and that the watch on your wrist is a declaration of that victory. Because for Richard Mille, luxury, it isn't about comfort or tradition, it's about performance under pressure, the meeting point of art, physics and adrenaline. For me, that week at the 2023 UCI World Championships, it summed up why I love watches and why I love cycling. They both capture moments that matter, and sometimes you only realise afterwards just how special those moments actually were. If you enjoyed this video, you'll love my Panerai Carbotech deep dive linked on screen. And remember, collecting watches isn't logical, but it is horological. This Rolex GMT-Master 2 with the Pepsi bezel is supposedly hard to get. It's not. Welcome back to Horological. So, the Rolex 126710BLRO, meaning blue and rouge, the two colours on the bezel. Yes, it's hard to get from the AD, but it's almost always available in the grey market if you are willing to pay the markup. The two cities that I personally know well in terms of watch market, Manchester and Glasgow. Within 10 minutes walk of the Rolex ADs in both cities, I can pick up one of these watches and have it on wrist within the hour. And that result of having one of these on wrist within the hour, you can do that on almost any day of the year in both of these cities. Now that tells a story. These watches, they're not hard to get, but they seem to be continuously funneled to the grey market before Rolex can get them into the hands of genuine watch customers, genuine people who are on the waiting list. A grey market that can quickly and effectively exchange cash for these watches in bulk capacity reliably time after time. That trumps calling individual clients who might say now's not a good time financially, or they may not be able to drop everything there and then to attend in person and go through the picking up ceremony at the Rolex AD for one of these watches. Analysed from a pure unemotional business perspective, offloading the most desirable pieces within hours of them arriving to a reliable buyer who either themselves or through low-key middlemen get the transactions done and the watches picked up. Even selling at market value, that reliable, quick monetisation pipeline enables the AD to convert watch deliveries in record time, no pun intended, and get the next delivery in at no short-term cash flow risk to themselves. They can even leverage the sale of less desirable pieces by offsetting with a high markup piece in a kind of like bundle deal. There are many more nuances to the setup than that, but that's a decent overview of the supply and logistics into the grey market system from my own personal observations. I went to Glasgow last week and I picked up my own personal Pepsi GMT from Safe Storage. I knew I would need cheering up this week. I had an eye surgery scheduled, hence why I'm wearing the Ray-Bans doing this video. Everything's went well, so in that respect it's absolutely fantastic. While I was in Glasgow, as I often do, I had a little stroll down Buchanan Street and then through the Argyle Arcade. This is the epicentre of watch culture in Glasgow. That's where all the boutiques are. There's Omega, Tag Heuer, Breitling. There's a big jewellery shop called Lane's that carries lots of different brands. At the top of Buchanan Street, there's my Rolex AD. So it's a fantastic place to go if you're into watches. And while I was walking through Argyle Arcade, that's a great place to go. A little bit like Hatton Garden in London, just on a smaller scale. And I actually seen a Hulk, I seen a 116610 LV, and it was for sale for £10,000. Now that represents a huge market drop for those watches. This was a slightly older model. It was a 2014 and it had been well worn, but to pick one of those watches up for that price compared to what they were going for even just a couple of years ago, that is a stunning drop in value. I've got my own Hulk in the collection as well, and I bought that well years before the pandemic, so I just ignore that spike in prices, and for me it's been quite a stable watch, and I wear mine anyway, so that whole investor piece, it doesn't come into play with me. I've got no Garage Queens in my collection. I would say they are getting very close to the very bottom of their depreciation curve. It's almost time to buy. If you're in the market to buy one of these watches, now would be the time to start making gentle inquiries and check prices out. Don't look online at Watchfinder and Chrono24. Don't do that. Go in person, speak to the jewellers. That's what I done, and I realised the price of this Hulk. Absolutely amazing. And if you were a first time buyer of one of these watches, I would say it's now getting very close to the time to get into one of them. Now, I just want to talk about homages to watches like this, and the Submariners, plenty available out there. You can get ones from Steinhardt, for example, and then there's a whole slew of AliExpress brands. I've actually got a Pagani GMT in my collection which homages this watch, and there's a whole story behind that, so I'll tell it here. I noticed a few years ago Jody at Just One More Watch was doing a review on the Pagani GMT, and he had one in at a ceramic Pepsi bezel, and when he reviewed it he noticed the colours, the colour differentiation between red and blue. It was very jagged and it wasn't good quality at all, and it was actually mirroring the issues that Rolex were clearly having at the time, allegedly, with the Pepsi bezel themselves. And the solution Pagani came up with was quite interesting. They also produced a Lunette Noir homage, which is, the Black Queen, and a Batman Batgirl homage. You could get it in Oyster or Jubilee, so they covered both bases there. They kept those watches with ceramic because the chemical composition of those bezels and then baking them in the chemical process to split the colours for the Batman Batgirl, that's a lot easier than the Pepsi bezel, and the Lunette Noir is just a no-brainer. You're missing a couple of steps of the process and just baking that black ceramic. So Pagani's pragmatic solution to this problem was they just pulled all the ceramic bezels off these watches and scrapped them and stuck aluminium versions on, aluminium Pepsi bezels on a modern form factor GMT. Now that was something. These watches were only on sale for a short period of time, but the minute I noticed them for sale, I had to jump in one. I just had to get that in hand and check what that's like. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that aluminium Pepsi bezel, it goes back to my early days of my first mechanical watch, the SKX009. That is my favourite combination of bezel. I just had to get one of these. I ordered it as a novelty, and I love it. Now, as I mentioned just previously, that the Pagani aluminium Pepsi GMT, it was only available for a short time. It was as if Pagani went back to the drawing board and they worked through their manufacturing and production process problems, and once again they're selling this watch, and it's again ceramic. Before Watches and Wonders 2025, Adrian Barker actually surfaced a video, and in that video he mentioned that Rolex may release a 40mm maxi dial modern GMT Pepsi, but with a vintage aluminium bezel. What a release that would have been. But alas, we didn't get it. However, we did get a stunning green dial, green Cerachrome bezel GMT that effectively is the GMT Hulk, and that is an amazing watch. I've never had the opportunity to have one in hand and look at it, but I can't wait till I get the chance. I would love to add one to my collection in the future, but for the time being, those watches are basically unobtainium. I did reflect at the time when I seen that Adrian Barker video. That's exactly the reason that I bought this Pagani GMT with the aluminium Pepsi bezel, and it's a fantastic, quirky, unusual little homage watch to have in my collection. I've not worn it that much, once or twice, but just to have that and to behold it, if Rolex made this watch, I am sure it would fly off the shelves. Can you imagine it? Now, for those viewers who haven't clicked off to another Andrew Morgan video, at the mere mention of a Pagani homage, he sometimes talks about them as well. Stay until the end and I'll give you a strong clue, a strong but homaged clue about my next historical deep dive video. Jacques Cousteau approves of this one, I can assure you. I have noticed, going through my statistics on YouTube, that I've got lots and lots of viewers, but not a lot of these are converting into subscribers. Once I reach 100 subscribers, I'm going to buy a top-level lavalier microphone, and thanks to the constructive feedback regarding sound quality, I promise we will get it sorted. So let's talk about the recent release of the Tissot PRX 38mm, an excellent entry into their product catalogue, but very, very late to the party, unfortunately. They have lost the zeitgeist and momentum completely, and they have allowed the competition to effectively catch up. They had the lead with the PRX, and it's basically that lead has been eroded. I've also noticed that integrated bracelet sales are trending down the way now. It's had its moment, and it's on the downward side of the curve. Again, Tissot, unfortunate timing. This watch should have been released 18 months ago. And I do root for Tissot. I've got a video up about Tissot and the synergy with Richard Mille. You could watch that one, and you see my history with Tissot. And I really hope I eat my words and this watch becomes a good seller for Tissot. From the little bit of research I've managed this week, I could see that no pun intended, I could see that the Tissot PRX 38, it still has the lack of an easily regulatable movement, unfortunately. So I'll watch the sales for this watch quite closely, especially over the festive season, and we'll see how it does. Business decisions inside Swatch Group, they appear to be like doing a 3-point turn in an oil tanker, unless you're a mega and you've got a free pass to basically release a slew of watches every quarter. A watch collection swelling faster than a high springtime Severn Moor. Another new Omega Speedmaster, this time the grey side of the moon. Oh, really? Expect these to be readily available on the grey side of the watch market at 25 to 30% off a retail in January and February. Just tell Santa to hang tight and bring you a grey market gift voucher instead of the watch. And now for a quick update on my own personal watches, my Panerai 1661, it's now on the Officine Panerai teal blue rubber strap, and I've got an olive strap held in reserve in the strap bag. I'll maybe change that in the spring. The Seiko Pogue Speedtimer, it's still on that tan leather bison strap that I bought, and you can find out the exact reasons for that in my Seiko Pogue Houston We Have a Problem deep dive video, and it's all the better for it. I'm actually going to take recommendations in the comments for this video for a new bracelet for this watch. There was a few you have commented to me about different companies, Long Island Watch, Uncle Straps, Strap Code, in conjunction with a bracelet for this watch. So hit me up in the comments with ideas. I will happily send out a G-Shock Solar Square to the best recommendation that I will buy in the spring for this watch and fit it, and we'll do a video for that on the channel. If I get multiple suggestions for the bracelet that I eventually pick to buy to fit to this watch, then I'll use a random generator and I'll get in touch to arrange how to get the watch to you, and we'll end the competition for this on the 1st of March. My beloved Marine Star Precisionist, that's still on the silicon strap that I changed it onto for reasons outlined in my deep dive video on that particular giant killer of a watch. And lots of the watches in my collection they're on my Buy Me a Coffee page in my affiliates link section, along with straps, hardware and some storage solutions, and it's all things that I own and have used. I only add things to those lists when I've been living with it and using it. These are things that I buy and use myself, and I've made loads of mistakes buying stuff, so it's only the very best, the cream of the crop products that make it onto these lists. If you're looking for something for Christmas, for somebody special, you might find something on those affiliate links that you like, and I do get a small percentage of the sale. It's a very small percentage, but I do reinvest that back into the channel, hence the new lavalier microphone arriving imminently to improve this sound quality. And I would just like to say a big, massive thanks to all my subscribers so far. And if you're not subscribed already but watching this, why not? It's completely free. And sound quality is about to improve exponentially, so the DJI marketing department tells me. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. Blancpain refused to make the watch that everybody wants. Welcome back to Horological. Today we're tackling a watch that Blancpain collectors have begged for, a wearable 40mm no radiations 50 fathoms. Blancpain doesn't make one of these watches in regular production, but a $200 homage shows exactly what enthusiasts are asking for. My family's connection to Westclocks in Scotland, that gave me an early awareness of how watchmaking has changed over the decades, especially with regard to lume. The no radiation symbol, it's not just a quirky vintage detail, it marks the point when the industry moved away from dangerous radium lume paint and towards safer practices. It's a dial logo that carries genuine meaning. Stay with me till the end, because I'm going to settle one of the biggest misunderstandings in dive watch history. Which came first, the 50 fathoms or the Submariner? So what can you actually buy today? In 2025, Blancpain launched a regular production 38mm 50 fathoms using a calibre 1150, 1153 family, power reserve of around 100 hours. Some versions hack the calibre 1153 and others don't, the calibre 1151. Movement finishing levels are high, really high, nice with a sapphire exhibition caseback. At the other end of the size spectrum, the 45mm 50 fathoms automatique with the calibre 1315, the flagship dive watch in the Blancpain catalogue with a movement to match, 5-day power reserve from a triple sequential barrel arrangement, hacking seconds, silicon balance and serious robustness and horology levels of finishing, 18 karat gold rotor, ongulage, perlage, exquisite hand finishing with a price and exclusivity to match. So your current choices are 38mm or 45mm. What's missing is a standard production 40mm 50 fathoms watch. They only make these as limited edition specials. The 2021 No Radiations was limited to 500 individually numbered pieces globally. Let's look at a watch spec slide of that exact 2021 Blancpain 50 fathoms No Radiations reissue. So we've got a case diameter of 40.3mm, we've got a thickness of 13.2mm including the domed crystal, we've got a lug width of 20mm, lug to lug's 46mm, and it has the in-house calibre 1151 automatic 3Hz non-hacking movement. Power reserve is 100 hours coming from sequential twin barrels. The crystal is box domed sapphire with AR coating on the underside. The water resistance is 300 metres and the weight is 93 grams on the OEM strap that it comes with. Blancpain is famous for the 50 fathoms, but there are some things about the brand you probably didn't know. Let's break down 5 of them. The oldest watch brand that went silent, founded in 1735 but went dormant during the quartz crisis, revived in the 1980s by Jean-Claude Biver and Jacques Piquet. No quartz, no smartwatches ever. One of the only ateliers to pledge it will never produce quartz or smartwatches. Very brave of them. The United States Navy's secret Blancpain. Because of the Buy American Act of 1933, Blancpain couldn't sell to the US Navy directly. However, importer Alan V. Torneg rebadged them as the Torneg Ravel TR900. The No Radiations logo explained. That bright yellow and red symbol, that's an assurance of tritium lume, not dangerous radium. This was adopted early by German Navy divers. Germany in particular had strict rules concerning the use of radium in military equipment. Blancpain's Bundeswehr issued 50 fathoms watches were required to be free of radium lume. Blancpain are more than just a dive watch brand. They also make ultra high complications, exquisite flyback chronographs for example, and Chinese calendar watches. They've also got stellar enamel work from a small, highly specialised studio, separate from the main atelier, with its own workflow and some of the most skilled dial enamelers in the face of the planet. So the next time someone says, oh Blancpain, that's just the 50 fathoms company, well now you'll know there's a lot more going on beneath that particular surface than first appears, and that was an intended pun. So why won't Blancpain just build the watch we want? The calibre 1315 is too large for a 40mm case. It's designed for a 45mm case. The 1150 family of movements, the 1151, the 1153, they do fit smaller cases, but in a 40mm case shell, it needs a spacer ring, and Blancpain seems to hate that solution. So their choice for the moment is 38mm or 45mm in regular production, and that leaves a gap right where enthusiasts want a 40mm hacking modern specification 50 fathoms watch. These are the exact situations that Homage watches play hard in. This watch dive's NORAD Homage cost $200 with a domed sapphire crystal upgrade. This particular watch is no longer available, but I have heard they are working on a new version made from grade 2 titanium, whereas this one is media blasted to give the appearance of titanium but is actually 316L stainless steel. The case profile is based on the Torneg Ravel TR900 previously mentioned, somewhat, not exactly, but it gets close. Ironically closer in spirit to the Navy issue original than many luxury 50 fathoms that are created today. Bulova have recently reissued the Mille ships W2181. Hamilton also make a similar khaki navy scuba reference watch as well. Bulova, Hamilton and Torneg Ravel, amongst a few others, were essentially competing for the exact same Navy supply contracts, and that's why there is design overlap between all these watches. This watch dives looks like matte titanium. It was also marketed that way, perhaps showing future intent, but as previously mentioned, it's actually 316L stainless steel with a fine media bead blasted effect on it to give it that titanium look and dullness. It has a military style stereo case back. There was an earlier version of this watch that had 19mm wide lugs, but this version here definitely has 20mm wide lugs. I've measured it several times in the calipers, and the silicone strap that's on it just now was definitely ordered as a 20mm wide strap. It fits perfect. As far as I have been able to research, this watch was also released in very limited production numbers, and before this titanium version they're working on becomes available, it's almost they ran this as a kind of prototype and seeded it out to the public. It's not individually numbered, but only available to order for around a month, then it was discontinued. It could possibly be as rare as that Blancpain 2021 reissue. How ironic would that be? Military divers deliberately dulled their watches to avoid sunlight reflections that could give away their position. And here's where my own personal experience proves the point. Snorkeling in Corfu 20 years ago, I wore a shiny luxury dive watch. A barracuda patrolling the edge of the reef caught a glint of that watch and it swam straight at me. A real Sigourney Weaver moment. I panicked, I flayed my arms, and I ended up shoving my hand straight onto a sea urchin. There was a painful lesson learned that day. Shiny ain't safe in predator-infested waters. That's why I question Blancpain's current approach. Their modern 50 Fathoms offerings, they lean heavily into polished luxury finishing, stunning on land, but arguably less suited to actual diving than the old matte tool-forward designs they once pioneered. Blancpain are rightly leaning into their heritage, but their business decisions and what collectors actually want are starting to drift apart. There's a real cognitive dissonance in that strategy. I swapped the cheap but passable NATO this watch arrived on for an alpine strap silicone with yellow stitching. It matches the NORAD's logo pretty well and it makes it a joy to wear. I now have a bit of a history of using these straps in my daily divers. The Belova Marine Star, my Omega Seamaster 300M Professional, and now this NORAD's. I'll just chuck a quick spec slide on screen and we'll talk through this actual watch now. So we've got a case diameter of 40mm, a thickness of 13.2, a lug width of 20mm as mentioned, a lug to lug of 48. The movement is an NH35 Seiko automatic, 3Hz movement. Power reserves round about 41 hours. The crystal is a box dome sapphire. Water resistance is a stated 300 metres, and the weight is 91 grams on this alpine silicone strap. The NH35, it hacks and hand winds, but it leaves a ghost date position. The NH38 movement from Seiko would have fixed that, but it costs more, it's a lot harder to source in bulk, and for a $200 watch it's an understandable compromise. For me, having those hacking seconds, it beats not having the hacking seconds every single time. And that neatly leads me on to this kicker. Blancpain released in 2021 their own homage to the original NORAD's 50 Fathoms. It had no hacking settings. It also came in the modern 50 Fathom style case, sized at 40.3mm instead of 45. It used the caliber 1151 movement. It didn't have hacking settings. A watch at that price that didn't hack. It also had the Invicta style Blancpain text on the side of the case. This much anticipated watch was limited to 500 pieces worldwide, and quite frankly, this watch had missed the mark. A quick summary: the Blancpain NORAD's 2021 reissue, authentic but no hacking. Watch Dive's homage, $200. It has hacking, but it is a ghost date click. No watch is perfect, it seems, even one at almost 100 times the price. Blancpain is moving smaller with the 38mm, and that's encouraging, but their watches remain shiny, polished showpieces with no true heritage offering on the horizon anytime soon. My Barracuda encounter makes me wonder, are these really the dive watches that Jacques Cousteau would have trusted? Or are they now just more high-end jewellery for the surface dweller, the archetypal desk diver, the collector's dream? The 40mm 50 Fathoms NORADs in a vintage style case with flagship specifications and actual availability, it hasn't arrived yet. Blancpain remains a distant grail for me. My 2018 Rolex Submariner is here to stay, but I'd love to add a 50 Fathoms to my collection. it's just they refuse to make the watch I want. I do like some of the Bathyscaphe references, and I'll not rule out adding one of them to my collection at some point in the future. Blancpain seem to have lost their way with the 50 Fathoms reference over several aspects of how they choose to interpret it in a modern form factor. The homage brands are extremely active in forums and actively engage with their customers. Perhaps Blancpain should take note. The homage is often a reminder of what collectors are asking for, but Blancpain refuse to deliver in any meaningful way. A brand can truly sabotage itself from a consultancy perspective. Get out your checkbook here, Blancpain. Make a 40mm traditional T900 style case, TR900 style case. No date, with hacking settings, less decorated movement, military style case back. Undercut slightly the price point of the Rolex Submariner, position it just above the Omega Seamaster 300M Professional, and make it widely available. Then Blancpain would have problems. Real problems. Problems keeping up with the demand for this watch. That watch would be a surefire winner, and we all know it. Are you in the same room, Blancpain? And there is a wider point going on here. Homage companies have built viable, scalable businesses by actually listening to watch collectors. They test prototypes, they ask for votes, and they respond to what enthusiasts want, often faster than the large Swiss ateliers who curate their champagne offerings more diligently than the watches that they create and sell, pushing out watches of gate-kept mediocrity often faster than they can pour that Louis Roederer into a flute glass for you. That's why this homage resonates with me. It fills a slot in my watch box that Blancpain refused to acknowledge even exists. In the world of Blancpain vintage auctions, there's a shadow story collectors also can't ignore. Independent researchers allege that some of the eye-watering prices for early 50 Fathoms examples weren't purely the result of bidding wars, but may have been driven by insider participation, with Swatch Group themselves being accused of quietly bidding on their own heritage pieces to push values higher and increase historical brand equity to mythical levels. It makes sense. If you've got a marketing budget of £100,000, what kind of penetration in today's saturated market is that going to make? Not much, but if you pay that for a watch, it becomes front page news, especially in horology related magazines and press websites. Look at how the Paul Newman Daytona became front page news, or one of those Monaco watches that Steve McQueen wore in the Le Mans movie. As watch collectors, we all know those stories, and Blancpain have become a brand that has also accessed that kind of marketing story. And here's the twist: whenever you place a bid online at Christie's, Phillips, Sotheby's, Bonhams, your IP address is recorded. They know exactly where those bids have came from. If multiple bids really did originate from inside Swatch Group networks, as alleged, the auction houses would definitely know this. But no auction house has ever confirmed or denied these rumours officially. There's no forensic proof in the public domain, and no legal case has ever forced full disclosure. Yet the silence from the auction houses themselves, while under fierce scrutiny, speaks volumes. The net result of all this? Classic Blancpain 50 Fathoms references, especially the NORADs and the Tournette Rayville models, they have become unobtainium for ordinary watch collectors, locked away in the world of six-figure auctions and sealed provenance. And that's exactly why homage brands and alternatives thrive, because they give enthusiasts a way to actually experience and interact with these legendary designs in hand and on wrist without auction price gouging or manufactured corporate gatekeeping. So here's the question: would you pay Blancpain money for a product widely acknowledged as being flawed and compromised? A hard to obtain product that doesn't quite hit the spot? Or would you compromise with an equally flawed homage product but at 98% less financial outlay? For me, this This homage isn't a substitute for a Blancpain, it's a reminder of what collectors regularly want and ask for, and proof that sometimes the smaller upstarts listen better than the big ateliers. Ironically, this specific homage is no longer listed as available on the Watch Dive's website. It leaves one to speculate that perhaps the brand that refuses to make the reference collectors are clamouring for may also be protecting that reference to prevent other companies fulfilling that demand. Or maybe Watch Dives are watching the scarcity business model of the Swiss and copying that as well as copying the watches. When you overview Blancpain's product and marketing decisions, especially compared to Omega, many collectors feel that Blancpain is intentionally kept as a small, ultra-luxury niche brand within Swatch Group, and I'm speculating wildly here. Could this be to protect the market position of the Omega Seamaster 300M Professional and Planet Ocean watches? These are watches that Blancpain's own products could directly threaten if produced and marketed aggressively within the Swatch Group ecosystem. Whether that's deliberate strategy or simply market positioning, the effect is the same. Blancpain seems to always ignore the watches that collectors actually want to buy. Right, time to settle the debate the watch world still argues about. Historically, the 50 Fathoms did come first, that is undisputed. It was wrapped up in military secrecy, but it beat the Submariner to the punch. But in my collection, after everything we've covered here today, the Submariner got there first, and yes, it's the Hulk. And remember, collecting watches isn't logical, but it is horological. There are watches that look good, there are watches that feel and look just right. Let's talk about why that's more intriguing and complex than first impressions. Welcome back to Horological. Before you even raise your wrist, something in the proportions, the balance, the spacing, the overall visual equilibrium, it resonates in a way you recognise instantly, even if you can't articulate why. The sensation feels intuitive, natural, almost biological. That reaction is not luck, it's not mysticism, it's the result of proportional mathematics, quietly shaping watchmaking for generations. The golden ratio wasn't invented by Fibonacci, and it wasn't discovered by Leonardo da Vinci, but Leonardo used it often. Fibonacci described it and documented it from a Middle Ages European context. Together their legacies form the mathematical backbone behind some of the most beautiful objects ever made, from Renaissance art to the proportions of a perfect wristwatch. The golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, and the classical systems of visual harmony do not dictate watch design with literal formulas. Watchmakers do not take a 40mm case and multiply it by 1.618 to calculate anything. Instead, these principles appear in the relationships between elements, how forms scale up and down, how components occupy space, and how designers instinctively organise the architecture of a dial. The influence is subtle, but the results are profound. Case proportions, harmonic relationships, not literal ratios. One of the most reliable signatures of a well-balanced watch is the relationship between case diameter and lug-to-lug length. While not tied directly to the golden ratio, the proportions cluster around a natural, wrist-adapted zone that feels harmonious in a way that echoes classical design principles. The numbers are remarkably consistent. A Rolex Submariner at 40mm has a lug-to-lug of approximately 47.6mm, a ratio of about 1.19. The Omega Speedmaster Professional at 42mm, it sits at around 48.5 to 50mm lug-to-lug, roughly 1.6 to 1.9. Tudor's Blancpain 58 at 39mm spans about 47 to 48mm lug-to-lug, around 1.2 to 1.23. These ratios fall far below 1.618, yet they occupy a zone often described as golden. in its feel, balanced, comfortably scaled and visually anchored. When a watch deviates from this zone, the response is immediate and universal. It wears larger than the numbers, it feels boxy, the proportions are off. Our wrists recognise disharmony long before our conscious minds do. The dial is where proportional systems become apparent. When analysts overlay golden rectangles, Fibonacci spirals or classical grids onto certain iconic watches, the alignments are striking, not as rigid formulas, but as evidence of a design vocabulary steeped in centuries of proportional theory. The A-Lange and Zona Lange 1 is the clearest example. Lange has publicly referenced the influence of the golden ratio and its off-centre arrangement. The cluster of the hours, settings, date aperture and power reserve indication aligns with proportional guidelines familiar to students of classical geometry. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, while not officially described by AP as a golden ratio composition, sits comfortably within analysis that shows the octagon and dial subdivisions aligning with golden rectangles. Gerald Genta was known for his sensitivity to harmonious proportion. These alignments reflect an educated design instinct rather than literal calculations. The Omega Speedmaster's Tri-Compacts layout also reveals harmonic spacing when analysed through these frameworks. Similarly, many Cartier Tanks and Santos models reflect the influence of architectural proportional systems, a natural heritage given Louis Cartier's fascination with classical French design. None of this requires explicit invocation of the golden ratio. It is enough that the proportions conform to the same organisational logic that has governed art, architecture and typography for centuries. A dial designed along these principles feels calm, legible and resolved. A dial that violates them, it feels busy, tense or unsettled. If you enjoy this type of deep dive into horology and watchmaking theory, hit the Fibonacci Sequence Compliant subscribe button below. It's completely free and it will help me grow the channel to bring you more content just like this. Thank you. Hands and markers follow a hierarchy that closely mirrors the psychological clarity created by Fibonacci-like scaling. The minute hand is typically around 1.5 to 1.6 times the length of the hour hand. Seconds hands nearly always extend towards the outer track, and hour markers follow a hierarchical pattern: long at 12, medium at the cardinal axes, shorter at intermediate positions. This sequence creates an intuitive priority of information. The eye knows where to look first, what to interpret next, and what to treat as contextual background. It is proportional order in functional form. Once again, the link to Fibonacci is not one of derivation, but of resemblance, a natural hierarchy that mirrors the way the human perceptual system prefers structured information. Even bezels, often dismissed as purely functional components, exhibit proportional tendencies that fall into harmonious patterns. Dive bezels frequently use numeral sizing, marker thickness and triangle geometry that produce balanced, aesthetically stable layouts. Whether intentional or instinctive, the consistency across brands is notable. Blancpain, Rolex, Panerai, Doxa, Seiko, many others utilise marker scaling that echoes classical proportion. The effect is not about mathematical purity, it is about visual stability. A bezel that aligns with harmonic proportion looks balanced even at a glance. When it doesn't, the eye senses it immediately. Bracelet taper is one of the most underrated contributors to a watch's comfort and beauty. The ubiquitous taper from 20mm to around 16mm at the clasp is a subtle echo of sequential proportional reduction. Each link narrows slightly, creating a flow reminiscent of natural contraction patterns. Rolex executes this with exceptional finesse. Omega follows similar logic with some of their watches. Even entry-level brands replicate the principle because the human wrist prefers it. Poor taper disrupts the entire aesthetic. Good taper disappears entirely. Harmony is felt more than it is seen. case shapes, logos, classical symmetry, proportion also appears in shapes that recur throughout watchmaking. Panerai's cushion cases align closely with golden rectangle-like structures. Omega's symbol fits comfortably within classical grids. Even the spacing of the Rolex coronet shows deliberate arc and interval design. None of these are advertised as exercises in the golden ratio, but analysis consistently reveal classical proportional thinking behind their construction. Designers trained in industrial and graphic design naturally lean towards these systems because they create stability and recognisability. The same is true across creative disciplines, architecture, typography, product design, photography, and even automotive design. The Porsche 911 provides a powerful analogy. Porsche does not officially claim to design the 911 using the golden ratio, yet independent proportional analysis of that car throughout the generations of it show that the car's silhouette aligns closely with golden rectangles, spirals and harmonic subdivisions. The roof apex often aligns with golden verticals. The rear window fits naturally within a golden spiral. The relationship between wheelbase, overhangs and body length sits near harmonic ratios. The classic round headlights, they occupy positions that follow proportional spacing systems, analogous to those used in human facial design. This is not numerology, it is industrial design functioning within the constraints of natural proportion. The 911 evolves endlessly, wider, longer, more aerodynamically refined, yet the proportions remain so consistently harmonic that the car's identity survives every iteration and every generation. That same phenomenon occurs in watchmaking. A Rolex Submariner remains a Submariner because its proportional language is preserved right through the generations of it, from the original 1953 to the very latest modern references that start with 1-2. The language is preserved throughout all of those generations, even when its components evolve. I myself used to own one of the most Fibonacci compliant cars ever built, the Audi TT. It's no accident this car has its place in the Guggenheim and has won many design awards. The version I owned was a slightly less Fibonacci compliant Mark II TT, but that was the one where the looks and the dynamic package came together, I would say the best in its 25-year production run. Let's talk about H.R. Geiger and the geometry of the uncanny. An unexpected but instructive parallel comes from the work of H.R. Geiger. Geiger never claimed to use Fibonacci or golden rectangles, yet analysis of his biomechanical art reveals structures deeply rooted in natural growth patterns. The elongated arc of the xenomorph skull aligns convincingly with a golden spiral. The repeating vertebra-like elements in Necronom 4 follow proportional spacing reminiscent of Fibonacci sequences. His organic industrial forms are grounded in the geometry of biology, and biology itself is a system of natural proportion. The effect is unsettling precisely because it is mathematically coherent. We recognise the structure even as we recoil from the form. This connection underscores a deeper truth. Human beings react to proportion before they react to content, and you see this in watches all the time and how people react to them. So who was Fibonacci? Fibonacci was one of the most influential mathematicians of medieval Europe. He didn't invent the number sequence named after him, but he introduced it to a European audience. His achievements reshaped European mathematics, commerce, engineering and architecture. Think of all those streets in major cities, especially the grid pattern ones, they're all modelled in Fibonacci principles. Fibonacci also introduced Arabic numerals to a Middle Ages European audience, yet another stellar contribution to horology. His influence can be seen all through horology, from spiral water clocks, sundials and almost every contemporary iconic watch design in existence. What emerges from all of this is not a claim that watch designers secretly build dials and cases with golden compasses or Fibonacci charts. Rather, it is that the most enduring, satisfying designs, whether it's watches, cars, furniture or art, they tend to align with proportional systems embedded in nature and internalised by human perception. The golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence are not rules, they are reflections of a broader principle. Objects feel right when their relationships replicate the mathematics of natural growth, visual hierarchy and spatial harmony. A watch designed within these principles does not simply look correct, it feels correct. It resonates at a much deeper level than conscious analysis allows. You don't need to know the geometry to sense it. Your eyes know, your brain knows, and your wrist knows. Design is paramount to success in any industry, none more so than modern watchmaking. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological.